In this lesson, we're going to set up the reference images for our car. Alright, so welcome to Automotive Modeling in 3ds Max. The first thing that we want to do is we want to get started by creating the reference images and putting those into our scene. Now I like to do this by using some geometry, putting that right into the scene and getting some material set up with our reference images and applying those. So to get started, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Create panel, and I'm going to go to Geometry, Standard Primitives, and Plane. You'll want to go to your front view and just simply left-click and drag in a plane. Now before you go any further, you'll want to do a little bit of setup on this plane. You want to make sure that you go to your Modify panel, and you want to make sure that you have a 1:1 aspect ratio on your length and width. And what that means is if your length is set to 200, and then your width must also be set to 200. Okay, that is 1:1. Now the reason I'm setting it up as 1:1 is because my images, my reference images, are actually set up in that way. So I believe the size is something around 1680 by 1680. Okay, now that's just the size that I came up whenever I finished this in Photoshop, but you get the idea. So now that we have this plane set up here with our length and width, it's also a good idea to make sure that your length and width segments are set to 1:1, because you may be switching back and forth between wireframe, and you don't want any extra wireframe on your reference images, as that can be a little confusing. Now with that finished, let's go ahead and right click on it, and well, we can go ahead and leave it just the way it is. We don't need to actually convert it to an editable poly. Let's go to our materials. Let's drag in a standard material right here in our view. And then we're going to double click on diffuse color and then double click on bitmap. This should bring us right into our images folder of our project files. Now you can look through your project files under the 3ds Max files folder, scene assets, and then images. Here you would want to go ahead and add in your front reference, and so I'm going to say reference front and then hit open. Let's go ahead and double click on that, and then we'll also come in and turn up our self-illumination so that way we can see that reference image very clearly without any shadows. Then we'll also apply that to the object that we have selected, in this case our plane, and then we're also going to turn on Show Shaded Material in Viewport so that way we can actually see that image in the viewport. Go ahead and close this really quickly and you'll see that that has been updated there. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my perspective view. So just left click on that and you should see the yellow outline along your border, and you want to hit Alt and W, and that will take you to full screen view. This is just going to make it a little bit easier for me to work. So I'm going to go to my rotation tool, and then I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees. Now you'll notice that I can't exactly get 90 degrees on that. So what you could do is go ahead and hit Cancel, and then turn on your angle snap. Right click on that angle snap, and you'll see that your angle snap settings is set to 5.0 by default. If you want, you can change that to 90, close that down, and then hold Shift and just snap that 90 degrees. Make sure that it's set to copy and then hit OK. This is going to be for our left view. So what I'll do here is I'll go into my materials. I'm going to back up just a little bit out of my view using the scroll wheel, and then I'm going to hold Shift and drag out this material. Notice that it's copying that material, but it's tied to the original bitmap. Go ahead and left click and drag on that diffuse color and release, and that will get rid of that image or that texture in your diffuse color slot. Double click on that again. Let's choose bitmap, and this time let's use the reference side. Open, double click on that, assign, and then show shaded in viewport. Let's go ahead and do this two more times. So hold Shift, drag this out, click and drag on the diffuse color, double click on it, go to bitmap, and this time we're going to use the top. We'll do that one more time, and this will be for the rear. So there we go. So now we have all of those. Let's double click on that. Let's just turn on Show Shaded Material in Viewport, and then we'll assign those whenever we're ready. Go ahead and close that, and what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and hold down Shift. I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees to where it's pointing straight up. This is going to be our top, oops, didn't mean to do that. This is going to be our top material, so double click on the top one. You can see that here. And then assign that. Close that. And then we're going to take this one, and I'm just simply going to grab my move tool holding down W. Alright, hitting W, and I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to drag this out in the Y just away from that. Then I'm going to go to my rotation tool, and I'm going to rotate that 180 degrees. Notice the number on there. Now it looks like it may not be 180 degrees, but I assure you it is. You can also see it right here, set to the Y at negative 180. Let's go ahead and go to our rear material and just simply assign that. Now what we need to do is we need to set them up to where they are separated from one another, so that way we can model easier. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll select the front reference image, and I'm going to grab my move tool, and I'm going to move it back in the Y direction. Okay, and actually, you know what, really quickly, let's make sure that we zero out all of the positions on all of these, just so we know that everything is centered. Okay, and then this one, we'll put that in Z, or excuse me, in the X at 0. The Y I'm going to leave alone because I pushed that back. I don't want it to lay over top of the other. And then this one will also be 0. Alright, so there we go. Now with this one, let's go ahead and push it back in the Y. Let's make sure that this Y value is 200. You can type that in. This one we'll do negative 200. We're going to take this one, we're going to move that in the X, and that's going to be a positive 200. And then we'll take this one, and we're just going to move it straight down. Move it down in your Z direction, 200. Oops. And let's do negative 200, excuse me. And there we go. So now we have these reference images all set up. Now I want to make sure, let me go ahead and select all of them, is I want to make sure that my car is sitting right along this 0 point on the grid. And so with all of them selected, I'm just going to drag those up in the Y. And I know that it's changing some of those values, but that's okay. I'm going to move it up in the Y until those tires look like they're sitting right on that grid. So something like that should be pretty good. Alright, so now that we have all of those still selected, we have those in position, it might be a good idea to go ahead and check your different views. Now looking here at my front view, it looks like I'm looking at the rear. That's a problem because I should be looking down the front of the car. So what I'll do is with all of these selected, I'm going to go ahead and right click and go to Object Properties. Here we'll want to turn on this back face cull, and that will allow us to see through the back sides of polygons, so that way we can see the front side. Okay, and this is going to become very apparent here in just a moment. We're also going to uncheck this Show Frozen in Gray while we're here, because I want to be able to see my images even after I freeze them. Let's hit OK on that, and now you'll notice we're looking down the front. So what just happened? If I go to my perspective view, hitting P on the keyboard, you can see that there's the rear of my reference plane. This is the outside polygon. This is the normal that you would see. But if I go onto the back side of the polygon, which is the back face, it's culling that out, which means it's not allowing it to render, so we can see right through it. So now that we have that set up, we can go to our front view, we can go to our left view, and then we could even go to our back view. So the front view is F, the left view is L, the back view is V, and that will bring up your viewports, and then you can hit K. Okay, notice the keyboard shortcut here denoted by the underscore underneath the K. So that's the back, and then we can go to the top by hitting T. Alright, so with all of those selected, let's right click and let's say Freeze Selection. Now what will happen is we will no longer be able to grab these and then accidentally move them while we're modeling. So now that we have all of those set up, let's move on into our next lesson where we'll start creating the wheel arches for our car.